Mrs. Fish, and welcome to Mrs. Fish's School. Today, we're going to be talking about the 10 most important things you must know about your English language learners in your classroom. Okay, let's break it down. All right, you're getting a new English language learner in your classroom. What is the first thing you need to know about that student? Is their name. Number one is name. Of course, you want to know any student's name that is joining your classroom. A name holds so much power. Making sure that you know how to pronounce that name correctly and spell that name correctly is super important to making sure that student feels accepted and welcomed in your classroom community. Typically, not always, but English language learners will have names that are different pronunciation, different spelling. Maybe there is the way it's spelled has different sounds in their home language versus the English language. So it can be kind of challenging. Don't be afraid to ask that student, hey, how would you like me to say your name? How do I correctly pronounce your name? If I say your name wrong, let me know. It is extremely important. Also, cross-check that the school district and other people are saying their names correctly and spelling their names correctly. Names hold power and they matter. We're not going to gentrify their name by creating an English name. You wouldn't want someone changing your name into a something else name. That's your name. It's special. Your parents named you that. So make sure that you're saying it correctly and respecting however they want it to be said. So the first one, name. Number two, country of birth. You want to discover where your English language learner was born. When you find that information, it tells a lot about that student's background. So if a student was born in your community, again, 85% of English language learners are from our communities or American citizens. It tells a lot about that student versus maybe a student that just immigrated from Vietnam. That way, it'll help inform you of maybe different cultural, emotional needs or academic needs they have. It also can help you be a more responsive classroom teacher to help support that student. So, what is their birth origin? Number three is discover that English language learner's family background. Now, I understand this might be a very sensitive topic for some students, and they might not divulge that information as readily, or their family as well. So, move with empathy when you're discovering this question. But you want to find out, if you can, who do they live with? What does their home life look like? And what language do they speak at home? Some students might have, their mom and dad and siblings at home, or others might live with grandparents, where other students might be staying with family members in the meantime, uncles and aunts, or just coming over with one parent, or so forth. I mean, just very similar to any student you might have in your classroom. The family dynamics are vastly intimate and depending on that student's family background. So the more you know about them, then the more you know what supports they might need. If they need any, if they have food insecurities or need more social emotional support, or if they need any resources, you can help provide them with assistance of different aspects of the school. Number four, home language. Typically, most schools get a home language survey when that student is enrolled into your school district. If you can get your hands on that, that's fantastic. You can find out what primary language that student speaks at home, or what was the first language they were taught. You can also discover maybe what languages their family members at home also speak to them or around them. Do they know one language or multiple languages? That's a very helpful, vital information for you when you are working with that student that's an English language learner, so you know what their primary language is, so you can best support them, as well as what language their family members speak at home. So number five, you want to discover your English language learner's academic experience. So have they been in the school system in America, the United States, since kindergarten and have a strong foundation in English in their phonemic awareness, reading, writing, math, or has that child have big academic gaps? Either they moved around a lot within the United States or they moved from one country to another and have large gaps. or maybe they have no academic experience at all. That will really help, drive your instruction with that student and understand what funds of knowledge they're bringing into your classroom. It's very different than, a student that might be a refugee that had interrupted schooling during a traumatic event. Will have a much different response in their classroom than maybe a child that has moved around a lot within the United States or has been at one school since kindergarten. So just being mindful of what that student's background experience is with their educational background. So once you find out your student's academic background, then you want to know what their capacity is to read and write in their home language. So number 6 is the ability to read and write in their home language. So I think of 2 students I had just last year on my caseload, and they were both 5th graders, and they were both from El Salvador. Student A came from El Salvador and had been in school in El Salvador since kindergarten. He had a strong foundation in Spanish. He could read, he could write, he knew his mathematics, science, and social studies. His mom was very involved in his academic career, and he was an avid reader in his home language of Spanish. So when working with him and trying to bridge English to Spanish, we had a much easier time. Now, I discovered that I did the work to make sure I could find out, can he read and write in his home language? Then I had another student B, who was also from El Salvador, but had very large academic gaps in his learning. He was only in school in El Salvador until 1st grade. Then he moved over to the United States. And when he was settling with family, he moved around a lot from school to school, and he had large academic gaps in his learning. So he did not have a strong foundation in reading or writing in Spanish, and he did not have a strong foundation in reading and writing in English. So he needed a lot different linguistic supports in the classroom in order to fully understand than my student that had a really strong foundation in their home language of reading and writing in Spanish. So knowing that will help your instruction immensely. The stronger foundation they have in their home language, the easier it will be for them to connect from their home language to English. If they do not have a stronger foundation in their home language, they're going to need more support in acquiring a second language. Number 7 is you want to find out your English language learners' language proficiency. So how proficient are they in English? So proficiency scales can vary depending on what language proficiency test you take, and that depends on what state you're in. The most common is WIDA or ALPA 21. And so a newcomer or a beginner might come into your classroom not knowing any English. And then there's emerging, progressing, proficient, and so forth. And so you want to know what proficiency they are in the 4 domains. And those domains are reading, writing, speaking, and listening. And so you might have a student that is extremely proficient in speaking, maybe listening, but they are progressing or emerging in writing and reading. So it can flux in the different domains, what area of linguistic support they need the most. So finding that out is pretty easy. Either the beginning of the year, your English language teacher is going to give them a screener test if they are not already in your school system. If they already are in your school system, they should have already taken that test in the spring, and you should be able to access those scores and see where your student's at. And if you aren't given that by your English language teacher, ask for it. Ask for it from your admin. Ask for it from the ESL specialist. They should have access to that. I know at the beginning of the year, I give out my students' proficiency score to all the new teachers. So if you have one of my kids from last year and they're moving up to the next grade, I make sure you get that and their language plan. So find out their proficiency score. So number 8, find out your English language learner's proficiency language plan. So this goes along with their proficiency score. Based on what they scored, an English language learner teacher like me, an EL teacher, has written a language plan for my students to help them in the classroom and beyond. So this lays out what supports are needed in the classroom and what goals you have for that student in order to linguistically grow, in order to acquire English, be proficient in English. So I think of my students there, I'd mark for them if they need extended time, or maybe they need to have a different test taking place, or they must have modification linguistically to their resources or test accommodations in order to best be successful in the classroom academically. Or maybe my goal for them is a writing goal. And so I'm really honing in on how are we focusing on our language acquisition with writing. So find out your student's language plan. Will help you immensely of supporting them in the classroom so you don't feel like you're doing this all alone. And if they don't have one, ask why, because they should. Number 9, get to know that student. Discover their interests. Get to know who they are as a person. If you need to, use translation apps in order to communicate and really try to figure out who they are and what funds of knowledge they have to share with you and the class. That way you can best connect their learning and what they already bring to the table into the classroom. They have funds of knowledge to share, and it's important that you discover who they are so that they feel the most comfortable in the classroom. They have low anxiety to even be able to approach learning a new language. And the more you know about them, the more you'll be able to support them in their learning. Number 10, ask that student and their family, what are their plans and goals for their student or themselves or their child in the future? So what is their goal for their students' academic wellness, or do they have a goal for acquiring English? And that will really help drive not only your instruction, but trying to motivate that student in order to be the best they can in your room, and you showing up the best you can for them. Those are the 10 most essential things you need to find out about your English language learners. I know it seems like a lot of information, but once you do have it, you have it for the rest of the school year, and you only have to do it once. And it will really help drive your relationship with that student's family, and your construction. So it's worth the work. Okay, I hope that they were helpful. Let me know which of the 10 are your favorites. And please don't forget to like, subscribe, share all the cool things you do with the video. Again, I'm Mrs. Fish, and this is Mrs. Fish's classroom, and I hope that your day is going swimmingly well. All right, see you next time.